G'day, friends and fans. I'm the author, David Applegate, author of the book, The Boyhood of Cade, book one of the Empire of Elves, and welcome to Future Fantasy Empire. This channel is sponsored by people like you, the viewing audience. So please, after the show, check out the links in the description. Sorry, those on the platform formerly known as Twitter, you have to look at the tweets, and sometimes even they don't tell you who posted this video. This is Elon, pull your finger out. Now, with me today is Kevin Miller. As you can tell, I'm pretty pissed off with Twitter right now. Sorry, folks. But yeah, he's actually written a few books, as you can tell by the thumbnail. And his latest is the Timepiece Legacy. Now, after this long and boring intro, please, Kevin, introduce yourself.
Yep, yeah, I'll definitely try not to bore you with my my introduction, but just to kind of sum it up, I became an author later in life because I discovered this story about my family, kind of a shocking story. Found out my last name's not really Miller; it's Puchalski, a Polish name, and we had like a family tragedy back in 1920 where my great grandfather was murdered, and we found these newspaper articles, and that basically kind of started my journey in writing. So I'm an Air Force veteran of 8 years in the U.S. I've got we have 9 children, my wife and I. Our 2 youngest daughters are actresses in Hollywood, so we kind of go back and forth to Arizona in the U.S. and California in the U.S. and kind of just living that life, living that dream. My wife and I are retired, and so it gives me time to write and do the things I love to do.
Happy belated Veterans Day, sir.
Guys, thank you very much. Yep, thank you. Yep, salute to all our veterans around the world.
Absolutely. When I tried to enlist, that's when I discovered that I had chronic fatigue. You know, they give you the endurance test, and I discovered to have chronic fatigue.
Oh,
and
gosh.
On my x-rays, there was a blip on the x-ray, and that turned out to be a perforation of my disc. That's a second disqualifier. So double D'd out, you know.
Wow.
Didn't even get a chance to even fit on a pair of boots.
Oh, wow. Yeah. Well, hopefully you're feeling better. Hopefully you got...
And yeah, that would have actually... The weird part is that would have actually put me right in square for Iraq too, if I was signed up. So
no, maybe that's a blessing in disguise. Then
after seeing, it's not so much. I mean, there are a few casualties, and most were fully recovered, but it's the let's say the alleged Gulf War syndrome, which we all know is the chemical cocktail they injected people with. But we'll hear about you and your books, please.
Yeah, absolutely. Go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, you mentioned you started writing later in life. What exactly, the tragedy. You want to tell us more about that?
Absolutely. Yeah. The first book I wrote is called Heart of Steel, based on a true story. And it's actually the story of my grandfather's life that I had no idea that he had went through this, because my grandfather kept this dark secret all his entire life. He took it to his grave. His siblings swore to secrecy. And not even my dad knew about this tragedy and didn't know that his name wasn't Miller, So we uncovered this, as I said, through some 1920s newspaper articles in Ohio, a rural little township in Ohio. And we learned of this murder of my great-grandfather. My great-grandfather was he was a rich farmer, good old boy, get drunk in town, a womanizer, that sort of stuff. But he was murdered, and my great-grandmother was bound and gagged, and my grandfather at the time was about 12 or 13. He was sent to the sheriff to bring the sheriff. There was a big investigation done, and the newspaper articles kind of chronicle that, and there's some extremely crazy twists and turns to the story. I don't want to throw spoilers out there, but it's really insane. The story was a story's been optioned in Hollywood for a feature film and also a TV documentary on true crime. So that my father came to me with a bunch of information. He didn't know how to write the book. He says, would you try to write it? And I'm like, yeah, I'll take a stab at it. And after writing that book, I just fell in love with writing. I fell in love with telling stories, and just, it just became a passion of mine later in life. And I immediately went to my second book, White Skies, Black Mingo, which is a historical fiction story, but it's inspired by my great-great-grandmother, who was Mingo, which is Ohio Seneca. She's Native American. And she was married to an Irishman during the Civil War. So it's a historical fiction book kind of based on that. It's I looked at that and I said, okay, it's a mixed marriage. Those are illegal, at that time period, even later on. So, my wife is Hispanic. I'm, of Irish, Polish roots and stuff. So I figured this would be an interesting story to write, interracial marriage and set in that time in the Civil War, plantation and stuff. So that kind of rolled into the second book. And then I just kind of kept going from there. I had all these stories in my head and all these ideas and stuff. So once I have that book out there, I just went on to the third one, Eyes of Morpheus, which is a more of a sci-fi type of story about a lady who creates a cryonics program that actually works. And the inciting incident to the story is she develops a fatal form of brain cancer and has to choose to stay and fight that or put herself in the very program she created, which she does. It wakes up 90 years in the future. And I have a lot of fun with that. Then that led to the next book, which was called Tequoma, which is an Indian word for Mount Rainier. And it's a kind of a volcanic apocalypse disaster type of story. And then, of course, the Timepiece Legacy is going to be a series, and that first book is out. Now, with my stories, people are like, wow, that's a lot of different genres, but the way I write, it's really not, because all of my books have the same elements to them. There's always an element of family. There's always an element of love. That's kind of the theme. And I always have to put a romance in there. Otherwise, my wife won't read my books. So it's got to be some romance element there. So all of these, elements of family structures and the human experience and stuff, I put in there. I'm inspired by Nicholas Sparks. I love the way he writes in his stories. And then I just take those elements and I put them in different scenarios, whether it's a volcanic apocalypse or whether it's a time travel, and then I'll put them in those settings. So my readers, they don't say, well, I'm a fan of this, I'm not a fan of that, because they know that all my books are going to, satisfy the reason that they like them in the first place.
That is it. You need a theme.
Yeah.
This gives you the author's distinction, which a lot of people out there, I don't think they've heard the term, but the author's distinction is where you take your personality and you put it into words and paper, and this often translates as themes and tropes that mean something to you. Yeah. And even though the two words are very similar, a theme is overarching, whereas a trope is an individual element. And again, for budding authors, I'm really struggling sometimes with these terms, but as you get along, once you understand, you need your theme, and you need your favorite. And that translates into your favorite tropes. You'll connect your books, and you'll connect your books to the readers out there. Yeah. And I find it fascinating that you've actually been able to weave this through multiple genres.
Yeah, it's been a lot of fun, and I love the challenge, and it's like, okay, because I write stories about stuff that I'm fascinated by. They always say write stories that you would want to read. And that's kind of what I do. It's like, I'm fascinated by a volcanic apocalypse. I'm fascinated by the aspect of time travel. I'm fascinated by the aspect of, cryogenics or the Civil War, So I'll write those stories with those themes, and it's just satisfying. It's very satisfying, but doing it that way.
I do believe, and a lot of people don't actually know this, but America is actually a volcanic plug.
There's quite a bit of volcanic activity, even in the state of California. We have a caldera.
The country itself is a
Oh, the country
volcanic
itself.
plug.
Oh, yeah, metaphorically, yes.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, setting Yellowstone's that little fracture.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah, let's hope that doesn't blow anytime soon.
Because
'Cause-
that's you are literally sitting
uh-huh.
on the side of a volcano. It's just
On a
so
powder
flat.
keg. Yeah.
Yeah,
No, it's a powder keg, and the size of Yellowstone, and within my book Tacoma,
yeah,
that's what happens. I mean, that's what we're dealing with is Yellowstone, going off. What would happen if
you have it.
Yellowstone went off? What would happen? What would the
Yeah,
world be like? And that's how I had to kind of look and research and figure out, what would this look like, if
there's
this
only
happened.
exactly,
Mhm.
because there's only a few
Yeah.
places in the world where these volcanoes have cooled to the core level.
Yes.
Australia being one of them, where the volcanic
Yeah.
plug, there's nothing. There's just solid rock all the way down. Whereas in
Right.
America,
Yeah.
it's just that top 1% that's
Hmm.
it's fractured. You've got like you've got Tacoma,
Yeah.
St. Helens, and you actually
Yeah.
look at the land flows, and you had these 9 volcanoes that just rose up, and
Yeah.
Yellowstone connected them all.
Yeah. No, it's a powder keg. And I remember when Mount St. Helens went off, and I was stationed in North Dakota at the time at the northern part there. And I remember seeing the ash coming all the way from Washington State, all the way across the country, and just kind of leaving a film, on all the cars. You could just wipe your finger and see the volcanic dust. It was crazy. And that was a smaller explosion compared to, some of the ones in the distant past. So God knows, God help us if those things all go off. And what would happen if all the volcanoes in the world went off at the same time? What dumping all that sulfur dioxide into the air and all that carbon, that would just be insane.
Well, put it this way, I'm actually researching into carbon
Mhm.
trading, and actually because I'm sick of 75 years of false promises,
Uh-huh.
and people have fundraised billions for the environment, and all they've done is gone out and enrich themselves.
Yeah, no, definitely. No, absolutely.
Definitely, but
Yeah.
looking at the problem is they're also misdirected. Our
Mhm.
biggest problem is not what we produce. Our biggest problem is that every few years a volcano puts out a big spew,
Mhm.
and that's where your offsets got to be. And the only way to offset that is a global program. You can't centralize carbon capture. It is wasteful technology, and it actually produces more carbon because you fill a compressor. How long does it last?
Right. Yeah.
You can seal it away. You can seal it away, but as wood. But no, you need a ongoing living program around the world.
Mhm.
That it's too expensive for governments to do. It's
Yeah.
on an individual basis that has to be done by individuals to capture, store, and recycle carbon in many
Mhm.
forms.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah.
But
Yeah. Pretty.
ultimately, of
Mhm.
course, good ideas do not spread fast.
No, it that seems to work that way. Yeah, and who knows why? Can't really explain that, but you get a lot of politics and money involved, and that just kind of
I know
puts
I've
the
gone way off track. This is you,
yeah
but you
yeah
with your just you never know where the interviews are going to go. You just trigger a
right
memory and bang.
right yeah.
I apologize.
Oh yeah,
It's
it's good.
you have a fascinating book actually. So obviously you
Mhm.
do a lot of research, but what
Yeah,
about the
no,
prep?
yeah. Go ahead.
Yeah, there's a process when you do this
Mhm.
preparation process. Do you want to go into
Absolutely.
that?
Yeah. And I think every author has their processes and their ways of doing stuff. I mean, there's no right or wrong way to do it. Personally, my idea, when I get an idea for a book in my head, the first thing I do is obviously I do the research, and that's one of the good things that the internet's good for too, and YouTube and stuff, is that I can watch documentaries of a time period, or how, like in Tacoma, there's a hot air balloon that's used. It's like, okay, well, I don't know much about that, so I would go and actually interview, professionals who have those kind of businesses and ask them questions, what can a balloon do? Can it do this? Can it do, that? So I like to interview experts. I like to go through and watch documentaries. I go to the library and just really read up on it. So because I want to make sure my facts are straight, because readers will catch you on that. I mean, if you're writing something that's okay, that's not right. They're going to call you on it, So I want to make sure that my research is thorough and and it's accurate, and the story, is telling it the way it should be, or the way it, logically could be. And then then I just talking to people, getting ideas, and of course, you have your beta readers that read your story, or you throw your concept to them, and a lot of times you can pull ideas from different people who are readers, and that might take you in a different direction. I'm one of those kind of what they call pantser writers, where the story kind of develops. Yeah, it's weird too, because maybe you experience this too, David. Because sometimes I don't know where the story's going, and I'm writing, and I'm sitting, and I'm seeing this like a movie, and I'm going through this, and this happens, and then all of a sudden this unfolds, and I'm like, that's the logical place for the story to go, and I didn't expect that, or you paint your protagonist into a corner and try to figure out how to get him out.
Why did you do that?
Why did you do that? Yeah, it's like, how am I going to get you out of this now? Exactly. So I'm knocking my head for days trying to figure out what would I do? How would I get out of this? How would somebody get out of that? And when you figure it out, you got a beautiful twist. You got something that's gold. That your readers will just love. But that's kind of my process, and putting it together. And then you just sit down and start writing, just sit down, just start writing and get that story down, and not worry about editing it right away, but just get all the ideas down and let them flow and tell a story, because to me, it's most important to me to tell a good story. I think the best authors are good storytellers, someone who can just pull you in. I mean, there's people who write wonderful, beautiful prose, very poetic, but not necessarily as strong on their storytelling ability. I'd rather read an author who can tell a really good story, even if his prose isn't as expert as, somebody,
Absolutely agree, because I heard, people complain there's too much dialogue in modern movies. There's too much exposition in modern movies. No, bro, you're just bored because it's poor prose. It's
right.
It's poor dialogue.
It's for dialogue.
The movie should be dialogue. The action should be minimal and impactful. Yeah. You're just an adrenaline junkie going, give me more CGI, give me more flashing colors,
Right.
And in order to have true diversity, you need to have true diversity in reading and your general entertainment. Like, look at your average sports fan. They will mass consume sports, build up, and then one day they're putting everything into a back of a trailer and setting fire to
it. Right. Exactly.
Because they're bored. They've absolutely consumed every aspect of it.
Yep.
I did this myself. I was an OG Doom fan. I played every level of that game till I could blindfold Rampage through the game. There was this one level at the end that I could never do. 99% of people couldn't even do it, let alone.
Yeah.
And then somebody came out and said, "This is how you do it." And I'm thinking, "Oh my God!" And I did it. I did the pattern, and it's amazing because and the thing is that translates in the games doing a pattern, and it comes back to themes and tropes. And when you're a writer, it's not about the lack of dialogue; it's about the engagement in the dialogue. And of course, you could do the J.K. Rowling route, and that is write for 8-year-olds, or and possibly get milk the audience until their ears bleed and they just their brains melt and they shut down and they tune out. Or you could write something truly engaging, and you just can't teach that, right? You have to do it like we do. You have to take your dialogue to your beta readers and smash it at them, and they're going to hit back. And sometimes they're answering the questions that you don't have.
Yeah, no, they're
even asked them, let alone have the answers for them. They
good
stuff you haven't come up with.
Right. Yeah. Good beta readers, man, are just invaluable. I mean, because they do, or they'll point something out that's totally missed, or might generate another idea. So yeah, definitely, it's got to be interesting. If you bore if you bore your reader, you're done. I mean, if you don't grab them by the throat, in the first few chapters, and then just take them on a wild ride, you're going to lose them.
Hollywood approach. Front. It's called front loading.
Yeah.
And then you glow back to the resolve. Loki, bang. What's he doing? Bang. He's the first season. He's getting hit. He's getting running around, but then it slow burns down to the end. I mean, that's the most. That's the best example I can come up with of front loading. But a different one is the slow long burn, and you get that with One Piece, Bleach, a lot of manga, a lot of Japanese stuff, and you see how successful that is. That's another way you can go. The slow long burn. Tell the story. And in order to have the story, you have to have like 99, 200 points. And that's a chapter. Each one's a chapter. Each point is a chapter.
Right. Yeah. Just comes together that way. So yeah, it's amazing how a story will come together. Or when you start, when you have an idea or a concept, how much it evolves and changes, by the time you're halfway, by the time you're finished the story. It's for me, it's way more than I even envisioned, to begin with, because it just goes so many different directions and you get so much good feedback. So it's a fun process. I just love it. I fell in love with it. I enjoy it. And I've got so many stories. I'm going to just keep writing until I check out.
Yeah, you could ask me the technical terms and I go, I know what a noun is.
Yeah.
I sort of know what a subject is. I know what a structure is. Rules. I think it's on the. I think it accidentally fell on my neighbor's bonfire.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Who needs rules, right? Yeah. Rules are meant to be broken. So yeah, you don't always have to follow the rules. And
I did a video on that, why I don't listen to Stephen King, and recently I reminded him why I don't listen to Stephen King. But he'll teach you how to write like him, and if you want to write like a privileged school teacher who knew people and had a wife who knew an editor, and you have no competition, and you have everybody still saying your name because you wrote that one good book once. Every writer wishes that, but they'll only teach you how they did it. And you can't repeat that success, because that success was 99% of who you know, and been way back when there were far fewer authors. Horror was a genre that almost nobody touched.
Yeah, no, that's very well said. I couldn't have said that better myself. My sentiments exactly. So
I try to get people, and I don't have to teach you this. You already listen to yourself. It's amazing how many people don't listen to themselves.
Yeah.
And I think the best. I mean, you've given some great advice, but we'll get to that later, because right now you've gone for a lot of inspirations. I think one of them is folklore.
Yeah, no, folklore is definitely a big inspiration of mine, and just in history, just all the crazy things that happen in the world. Some things are just, unbelievably, that are true, but just so unbelievable, and I draw a lot of inspiration from my family as well too. I mean, like I said, I have, we have 9 children. We have 2 younger daughters. My youngest daughter is 17, and I have a 21-year-old. And this latest book, The Timepiece Legacy, there's a big relationship between the father. The protagonist is a father, and he's got 1 daughter. She's 17, and of course, I pull so much dialogue that's actually real dialogue with my daughters, and some of my readers catch on to that and say, that stuff sounds pretty real.
Too real. Yeah,
and I'm like, yeah. I said, because some of those conversations really took place, and they give me good material. They're funny and they're wit, and they just give me great stuff. I'm just paying attention to them all the time, and listening to them to talk to when they talk to their friends, and just kind of eavesdropping in on their conversations and just paying attention to how they think and feel and, the stuff they talk about. Cause that gives me a lot of inspiration. And of course my wife inspires me too. She's the love of my life, and she's my critique partner. And she doesn't hold back. If she don't like something, she'll let me know. And that's exactly what I want her to do. And we'll go back and forth and stuff, but I love every bit of that she does that. And, and it's like and a lot of my books in my acknowledgments, I talk about my kids and my grandkids and my wife. They're my inspiration as well. My books are my love letters to them, my legacy to them that, hopefully I'll leave, for them when I'm gone, when I'm no longer here. So
that's all we could do as an author is pre-write our obituary.
Yeah, exactly. There you go. You got something. Yeah, they got something they can pick up someday. Okay, Dad wrote this, and let me read this. And they'll find stuff in there. Yeah, no, exactly. What were you thinking? Or they'll catch things. I like to put. I don't know about if you do this, Dave, but I like to put little Easter eggs sometimes in my books too. I'll use the name, for example, my book Eyes of Morpheus, the doctor who's the researcher for the cryogenics program. Her name is Dr. Emily Grace. Now, my two youngest daughters is named Emily and Gracie, so I took their names, and Dr. Emily Grace is a great name for a protagonist, and a lot of people will pick, I say, I saw what you did there, they'll pick up on that. And I'll use birthdays and special dates for that people would, little things that family members or friends will recognize and pull out, hey, that I know that place, or that's my birthday, or that, just stuff like that. I like to throw stuff in there for them to find at some point.
As you could tell, I'm very influenced by anime. I'm drawn to the longer story form. I find these it's a more stable story form.
Yeah.
Although I'm more focused towards adult material than the average. I think that too many stories out there are immature and incomplete because they write for children, and yet they're talking about murder, mayhem, and war, and yet they're writing at a children's level for children. And it's like, no, bro, they'll go over their heads and they'll glamorize it. They'll GTA it. They'll think, they can go out there and Rambo mentality.
Yeah. Right. Yeah.
And war. This is a quote I'll try to come up with from my book about war, and the first casualty of war are all the idiots. The first thing war does is sort out sorts out the idiots.
Boy, does it ever, right? Yeah.
Yeah, and I've actually covered war in various YouTubes, and to tell people that there are things like there are people out there who wait for war just so they can go out and commit crimes, and they just can't believe you. But stranger than fiction, some of the worst atrocities are done under
during times of war.
During times of war.
Yeah.
And my own experience, my wife was Vietnamese, so when I was over there, you would hear the stories, and some of the stuff I learned about history just wasn't taught in books, and still isn't, and people really don't understand it. So those have inspired me to try and get those into books as concepts. But unfortunately, because I'm a slow burn, I'm only in the book 3 of a long story. So it's a slow burn.
Yeah.
And I'm still getting there, but I'm also inspired by Tolkien and a few others. But I find most authors are inspired by other authors. It's like Shakespeare, Greek plays, How about yourself? You've obviously been inspired by newspaper articles and family tales.
Oh, yeah. No, the authors that inspire me, like I mentioned earlier, Nicholas Sparks, I like how he captures the human, condition. and those kind of relationships. I really like that. Dan Brown, I've read some of his stuff. The last one, Origin, I think is the last book I wrote of his, and he's a good storyteller, and he's good at making you those promises at the beginning of the book, that he delivers at the end there. So I like him. I like stories, and like Fannie Flagg wrote Fried Green Tomatoes. I like stories that like maybe live in the present and go back in time, and tell a story in history. Those kind of fascinate me sometimes as well. But the old classic, the Hemingway.
For Whom the Bell Tolls was one of
the
ones I've only read. It's one of the few books I've read more than once.
Yeah. So
that's in 1984.
Yeah. So and you just learn. There's two ways to read a book. Just sometimes I have to sit down and just decide I'm going to just read this book for the enjoyment of it, or am I going to read this book and really kind of try to dissect and figure out why is the author right, what's he's trying to say here, try to catch the symbolism and the foreshadowing, and just try to kind of examine it, which takes me longer to read the book than when I'm doing that. But
well, if you look for inspiration, you want inspiration about politics, Dune. You want inspiration about journeys, Tolkien. You want inspiration about families, there are tons of books out there on family dynamics that although Game of Thrones isn't really about family dynamics.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, the way it plays out, even the fact the unrelated act like families. That book is one big projection about my family's fucked up dudes.
No, exactly. Yeah, like crazily. It took me a long time to watch that series. My wife and I watched it just like a couple years ago. Years after it came out. It's like I just never got around to it, and I never read the book or anything, but we watched that. I'm like, whoa, okay. I wasn't thrilled about how they ended it. I almost felt like they just kind of threw an ending together, and that was it.
Well, they did. That was Martin's hissy fit. Now Martin will deny this, but in his interview in New Zealand, he said, I kind of lost interest, and I threw my notebook at him and said, well, if you know so much, you finish it. And then he stormed out. So I tend to believe that live interview that wasn't recorded, but I tend to believe that than what he said later on recorded interviews, that he did have a hissy fit and stormed out. And but, you tell your agent or you tell your publisher that, or you tell your audience that, they tend to think, oh, well, is he punishing us for not liking it? Why is he taking so long to finish it? Well, now you know why he's taking so long to finish his book, because did throw his notebook at Dan and left it. So he had to, from memory and watching his own show, rebuild his entire notebook, his world notes.
Yeah.
And in the meantime, he's getting paid $100,000 to edit scripts.
Yeah.
And he admitted that he only made $100 and something thousand from his books. It was the millions came from the studio rights. So he's getting paid more per script than he is per book. So you do the maths.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah.
I don't like authors like that, because they're not authors, they're editors,
Yeah, that's a good point.
You don't abandon your audience. Dan and that could stuff up your work. You paid millions of dollars to put up with them. So you finish your job. You do those 22 episodes, not leave them at 13 and walk out.
Yeah, no, I
don't care
agree.
who you are.
Yeah.
There are people out there who'd love a Hollywood deal, just for anything, I mean, unfortunately, there's only room for 530 shows per year, and you think that's a lot. I can't watch 530 shows a year, but you think that's a global audience. That's a global audience. Each person is only going to see a tiny fraction of that.
Yeah.
But there's far more authors than that than there are slots.
Sure.
So that's the way it goes.
Yeah.
People have to manage their expectations, and that's why I do these things. Manage my expectations. draw inspiration from other authors. I love talking to other authors because
Mhm.
it brings experience, but it also reinforces your own method. You go, yeah, my methods work. So it's not my method that's the problem. It's just that there's so many of us out there. You know, you're not
Yeah.
failing because you're a bad author. You're failing because the world audience, there's just more
Yeah.
writers.
Yeah,
You
and a
know, there's
lot of good
more,
writers and a lot of
a
great
lot.
stories, and
Yeah.
it's hard to get your stuff seen from such a sea of wonderful
And it
stories and
really
talented
hurts.
authors. Yeah.
Yeah, it
Yep.
really
Yep.
hurts when somebody who is not, I'm not saying isn't talented, but
Mm-hmm.
that dude, when you're
Mm-hmm.
see if a lot of us, for a lot of us, right, we would love to have we'd love to have that development team, you know, that 20,
Mm-hmm.
30 people that put together the script and your dialogue. And
Yeah.
you'd imagine how many authors out there. I mean, you go back maybe even 20 years, and some of these people, they started with the fact there was little competition and they had a few good
Mm-hmm.
ideas. And the fact is, there was no self-publishing.
Mm-hmm.
And Vanity Press was, nobody could afford it.
No. Right.
But
Yeah. Yeah.
sorry, I'm uh, really interested in your research projects,
Mhm.
because it sounds like you know a little bit more about research than I do. So you want to fill me in about research?
Yeah, I don't know that I do, David. I'm my approach again is just to to really study the science of whatever it is I'm writing about, to get the facts straight or as close to, or the theories, viable theories that are out there for
Yeah, well,
how things work. Yeah.
yeah. Well, I looked at time travel, and
Mm-hmm.
I pretty much I'm of the linear universe theory myself. That
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
you can have parallel dimensions. Absolutely, you know.
Mm-hmm.
I know all about phase shift. I've actually seen phase shifting of light, where you know you shift
Mm-hmm.
it and you actually start to see things in infrared and objects that you actually start to see that there are probable objects in the distance that are infrared that you
Yep.
can't see and you can't interact with, right?
Yep.
They're
Right.
always at a
Exactly.
distance.
Yep.
So
They're
there
always at a.
is a lot
Mhm.
more to the universe than we can see, than we can
Oh, for
feel, than we
sure.
can touch.
Oh yeah.
But as
Yeah.
far as time travel goes, I'm not of the Morbius dimensional theory that it's more linear, that there's that tiny fraction of existence.
Mhm.
But once that optical energy dissipates, that existence is gone. So you're in that
Mhm.
tiny fraction of
Yeah.
existence.
Yeah. Lots of theories and lots of very interesting theories out there. Even just
Yeah.
looking into space. I mean, you're seeing light from millions of years ago. You're looking in
Yeah.
the past. I mean, you
Well,
are kind of time travel because you're looking into the past.
yeah,
And
you're looking at the past, but what I
yeah.
mean is physical relocation.
Uh
There has
huh.
been um, tests that all of us are out of sync by ever so slightly
Hmm.
amounts. Um, that's why naturally we pause between sentences, because we're actually understanding the transmission of sound has a time travel, that
Hmm.
everything has a time component to it. Now, M8 theory, which gives us the square that turns into the I forget the formal name of it. You know, they call it the Star of David, but it actually has it's a actual trigonometrical figure
Hmm.
that
Hmm.
that the Star of David was actually lifted out of a alchemic text from 60 just from way back. It was but it actually it shifts again. You actually have the three dimensions of a cube.
Yeah.
And what you understand is the first dimension of a cube gives us obsidian. The first rotation gives us carbon. The third rotation gives us one of the most strongest. So we thought graphene was the strongest. Now
Hmm.
we take the third rotation and we now have a three-dimensional lattice, which is 100 times stronger than carbon, yet it's still carbon.
Hmm. Interesting.
And that science of rotation has yet to be fully explored and exploited. But just think, if that's what they could do with carbon, imagine if they can get enough energy together to start rotating steel, and which they have. They have a substance which I've used in my books called superplastic.
Oh,
And it's
interesting.
hard to believe.
Yeah.
Manganese and titanium, all the substances, and these tiny little, they use huge supermagnetic coils to streamline this material while they stretch it, melt it, and do all sorts of things. And I've seen videos of this being like spaghetti. And yet when it hardens, straight through. You whack it down through a table and it'll go straight through. It's, you think like, you think superheated, it's like cuts butter. Like everything it cuts is like butter. This is the most amazing material out there. So there are stuff that is so cutting edge that I've read about that. Yeah. But when I do research, it tends to be on the dry science side, not on the human side. That's why I said you seem to know a little bit more about that side. Obviously, for people who don't understand, newspaper articles, you can go to almost every library. They will have still a fee. It's called Fish Online in America, isn't it? Where it's got all the archives.
Yeah.
Once upon a time, there was a thing called microfiche, and that is where they took every newspaper, they took a photograph of every newspaper,
put it on the microfiche,
put it on film, and that film, because you only get the small version of it, and you like
just print it out. Yeah, you just pull it up and print it out. Yeah, and there's still microfiche.
Yeah, still microfiche, but nowadays with a quantum memory matrix, you can store the entire internet in the roof of your house on plastic. Now, of course, this is not superplastic. This is called optical plastic, and it looks weird. It's orange. It's about an inch thick, but it can store quanta, which is like phenomenally huge numbers. But each quanta is the size of an atom. You don't know how many atoms there are in. So yeah, that's an amazing amount of data. So eventually, we will not have the internet anymore, because every capital city will have a quanta server, because there's no way you can afford to build and run an entire network of all these computers. So you're going to have fewer servers, but each server's going to have the entire internet, and they're just updating each other. The rest of us just get the data sent to us, and we just access it from home without. So the only internet would be like this, The rest would be just, hey, I want to look something up. It's there, It's there. It's at the tip of your fingers. You're not dialing up or anything like that. Everything's just constantly updating around the world. Data. It's going to be all about data.
Oh yeah. Yeah, well, it's been all about data for a lot of years, but now it's all about data to the point that it's just gotten exponentially insane.
The entire computing industry is all about. It's not going to be about generating data. It's going to be maintaining and updating data, so that nobody controls it.
Yeah.
One of the big things that's the geopolitics is the fear of control of data, and to wrestle control of that data, so that if somebody in Africa wants to know how we could go to a store and buy common technology and put together a windmill, but they don't have that infrastructure, so they don't have that information. So so it generates envy where there should be none, because for us it's so easy, and we just can't understand what it's like not to have a hardware store, or have a how to do book. Like, I grew up with how to do books. There are very few of them out there, but they're still there. There's howtodo.com now. And still, because it's not in their mindset, it's not, they haven't grown up with those libraries and the infrastructure. Those are the sort of things, data management and data distribution are going to be so big.
Yeah.
And
Then
that
you,
it's all, yeah, will redefine the internet.
yeah. Oh, definitely. And then you add into it all the AI stuff now, and it's just going to be insane over the next few years. I mean, it's just going to be.
Well, I did research on AI, and
Mhm.
people, I didn't know this, but I was exposed to AI back in the 90s when I was at university. And the AI conversations were pretty easy to trip up the AI. But these days,
Mhm.
you don't
Yeah.
know. You just don't know. But
No.
so many people out there, you have two camps now. See, I had this conversation with somebody else too, and they asked, and I said, when I was young, I wanted AI because I would be able to take my stories and turn it into a book, that book into a movie.
Mhm.
But then when I grow older and after a few job redundancies, you start to realize, wait a minute, I'm putting people out of work here.
Mhm. Oh, people are being put out of work. That's why Hollywood has been striking. That's why that's what mostly what that strike was all about. Because now you AI, you're able to duplicate people and do these deep fakes that you cannot tell that's not that actor or it's not that voice. You know, voice actors. It's like you don't need voice actors anymore because I can copy my voice and create an audiobook of my books using my voice just with AI. I don't have to go out and hire a voice actor now. So it is a threat to that creative industry with actors and voice actors. So that's
It's,
why they were striking and what they were trying to get set. It's like, no, you can't use my image, and not pay me
there was two
royalties.
camps. There were two camps. I didn't support the greed camp. I supported the anti-AI camp.
Mm-hmm.
And there were actually people in the greed camp, as I call it, who were pro AI. They
Yeah.
wanted the residuals. They were saying, "Oh,
Yeah.
Disney, give me." They were doing
Mm-hmm.
side deals. You probably heard
Mm-hmm.
stories about them
Mm-hmm.
too, where people go, "Disney, I'm only striking so you'll give me more money. I'll sell you my voice
Yeah.
after it's done." And we
Mm-hmm.
all heard about those stories, and some of the biggest ones who are out there going, "Comrades, I'm with you forever." But you already signed the deal, didn't you? And you got your $1 million, you big
Mm-hmm.
sellout.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah.
Some of the
Well.
loudest voices who were screaming weren't screaming about AI, they were screaming about pay and residuals. If you start to
Yeah.
pay attention, why are they screaming about pay and residuals when we're talking about limiting AI? What's going on? And you start to hear stories that that's not.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But unfortunately, like when I did research into AI, it's like one of these industries we cannot stop, only control,
Mm.
only control. And I think eventually you'll have two camps. You'll have the people who buy books off authors and the mainstream, which is going to be AI no matter what we do. Because if America brings in any AI, China will go pro AI or Russia
Mm-hmm.
will go pro AI. And Iran
Yep.
is now saying that they are looking at AI because it will enable them to compete on an equal
Yeah.
playing field with America because the AI can generate or study and generate literally
Mm-hmm.
pull stories out of the internet and generate content without
Mm-hmm.
without human oversight or anything.
Right.
And like it also gives powerful censorship tools, which is why every government's developing AI.
Mm-hmm. Right.
So
No, true.
the Hollywood strike unfortunately got used as a distraction from what the government's really about, and that is they were developing a censorship tool
Mm-hmm.
to study and analyze people's actions, voices, and
Oh,
and
yeah,
um,
they love censorship for sure.
and of course there's the secondary industry. We're going to save lives. We're going to have drones out there, and it's like,
Mm-hmm.
sure, we're watching in Ukraine where drones are fighting drones right
Mm-hmm.
now, and and sure, it's saves lives. But the thing is, it only saves lives at a certain point because eventually one drone is going to be flown. And what are they going to do after the drone kills a drone? They'll go on and then kill a person anyway. So they're lying to you about. They're just lying, And I just don't like it. It's not politics. Lies transcends politics.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
But we're getting a little bit away from you and your book, and although this is both giving us material to go work with later, absolutely,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
yeah, I can see the wheels turning right now.
Oh yeah. No, I always got my notes, making notes and stuff in front of me there. Yep. Yep. Wheels are
Um,
always turning. So
yeah, one of
yeah.
the pieces of advice I gave to people, and right now, is make notes. And
Hmm.
you probably got a dozen or two in your
Oh,
sleeve.
sure.
What's your
Yeah.
what's the top advice? What would you
Well,
say, Mr. Budding Author, other than don't give up?
yeah. You know what? Like you said, paying attention to people, paying attention to conversations and how people interact, so that it helps your dialogue. Um, and just sitting down and writing. I mean, I watched a master class with Dan Brown, and one of his first things is saying is write like nobody's watching, because nobody's watching. It makes sense. It's like, sit down, don't be afraid, of your computer. Just sit down and start writing your story, because nobody's watching you, and no one's judging it yet. You got, let those ideas flow and stuff. But I would say a lot of new authors are just don't have the confidence. You're, like you said, they're not a fan of yourself. You got to be a fan of yourself. You got to trust yourself to write a good, to write a story, and to write what you know and what you love and what you care about, and put that down on paper, and let it speak for itself. And you've got a lot of processes there. You're going to, have go through editing and all these different things to help make the story better, but just get the story down, and just pay attention to the world around you. The stories are all around you. Everywhere you look, there's stories being written, right in front of you. So, just become observant of that, and yeah, take notes, write stuff down. And, that would make a good book, or that would be my advice, and just do it. Don't wait. Don't put it off and say, I need to write a book. I need to start. No, start today. Do it today. Start writing your ideas down. Get it down on paper. So that would be my advice, and then just keep rolling with it. Just keep the
Yeah,
ideas going, and love what you do.
yeah,
If you
love
don't
what
love
you
it, if you don't love it, then don't write. Because you need to write, because you're spending a lot of hours, putting ideas together, and you're kind of neglecting relationships and doing, yeah, exactly, and stuff.
per
So
day.
so you
Yeah,
so better love what you're doing. And if you don't, then that's the time to stop writing.
writing is extroversion by
Yeah.
introverts.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Yeah, yeah, and you can say a lot. I mean, you can put a lot of your feelings and your own views and stuff, and interject that into your writing. Don't be afraid to do that. You don't have to
Yeah,
write to please other people necessarily. You write to what you feel and what you think, and coming from your own heart and your own mind, your own experiences. So that
yeah.
would be my advice to young writers.
Now, obviously, there are people who get stressed, and of course, most of them, every writer deals with writer's block. Now, of course, this is actually a form of stress. How do you deal with it?
You know what? With writer's block, and where you're just sitting there and you just can't get an idea going, I deal with it by just getting away from it. I put everything and just sit it down and walk away for a week or 2 weeks, and then come back. Because the way the mind works, I mean, the mind's always thinking, even back there subconsciously, when you don't realize it's solving problems, and it's going to, those wheels are going to continue to spin, and those answers are going to come to you eventually. But if you just kind of walk away, take a break, don't think about it, put it aside, and
Yeah,
let your subconscious keep thinking about it, all of a sudden it's going to hit you. I get a lot of my ideas when I go to bed, as I'm falling asleep. I'm
yeah, that's
picturing my
actually
story.
common.
Yeah, yeah,
It's
yeah.
yeah.
It's
So,
it's a great
what you
time
do
to
through the
just flood
day,
your
yeah,
mind. Yeah, yeah.
build it up through the day, the different things you
Hmm.
want to solve, and then when you go to sleep, get ready to reach out for your notebook
Just,
or your phone
yep. Run them through your
and
head, and
run it through your head and let it
yeah,
go.
yeah,
Because
yeah.
all your process. See, the thing is, sleep is when your brain is transitioning, so it's going to start
Hmm.
dumping. So
Yep.
get ready
Hmm.
for it. A lot
Yeah,
of people
yeah,
don't understand that, and that's the best way to deal with writer's block. Is
yeah.
just let it all build up, and when and then, like you said, walk away, relax, get
Hmm.
into that mode
Hmm.
when your brain has finally said, "Oh, all the input is done. Now I'll process it."
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Yeah, and it'll come. Just relax. Don't put pressure on yourself. The thoughts, the creativity will come. It'll
Yeah,
come to a creative mind will cannot be not be creative. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
If your mind's creative, it can't help itself. It's going to be creative. It's going to create ideas. Just wait for them. Don't get frustrated. They'll come.
Final thoughts?
So, final thoughts. Just I love hearing from readers. I love getting new readers. My website is authorkevinmiller.com. This is my latest book, Timepiece Legacy. I'm writing this book 1 of 3. I'm writing book 2 right now and having a bunch of fun with it. People, everyone that's read this can't wait for number 2. They're on me, so I gotta stay with it. And I appreciate you having me on, David. It was a fun chat. I learned a lot of things and enjoyed the conversation. I appreciate it.
Yeah, and best of luck. Although you don't need it. A lot of people wish for luck, but you know what you should really wish for is what you really deserve. Instead of,
If you deserve it, go out and get it. Because you just go after what you want.
Yeah. Thank you, everybody. Please like, share, subscribe, get this video out there, and of course, support the channel. Not only my links in the description, Kevin's links, of course, down there as well. And thank you all for your time.